this offseason, one of your former teams, the Detroit Lions, odds makers, those in Vegas and other places, they gave the Lions a preseason win total of 6.5 wins. Actually, it started at 6, right? So they said, look, we think the Lions are a 6-win team. And, and you had him on your general manager podcast, which is a great show. Brad Holmes. I felt like Brad Holmes in some of his moves had really a good clue of what was going on the last few years. Dan Campbell, a former NFL player, former tight end, part of the brethren for me, I felt like was doing a good job coaching them last year. They covered the spread in 11 of 17 games. They come out this year. They win one of their first 7 games. Now, they had a bunch of close losses. They looked competitive in a lot of games. Really made me look foolish for going around the country prior to my time at Sumer and telling everybody to bet the Lions this year. And yet, over the last 6 games, they've won 5 of them. Their only loss was a loss on Thanksgiving around noon to the Buffalo Bills, who might be the best team in the entire NFL. And so that's given rise to a little bit of a situation, because part of the handicap for the Detroit Lions was that Jared Goff, a quarterback who was selected first overall in the 2016 draft by Jeff Fisher and the Rams, could operate a good offense if things went right. And that has happened. Goff is 9th in yards per attempt throwing. He's 8th in adjusted yards per attempt. He's 5th in net adjusted yards per attempt, which takes into account interceptions and sacks. He's even 9th in expected points added or completion percentage above expectation. That nerd composite, right? So he's played well this year. But be that as it may, without Amon-Ra St. Brown in the lineup, the offense hasn't been very good. And so I wonder if you can continue to go with a quarterback who is so dependent upon external circumstances, or do you need to, despite their success this year, Thomas, do you need to move on and try something new at the position? And I want to get your opinion, because it's so hard to get that position right.
Well, there's so much to talk about again, and you always lead in so well. Before we get to that question, I want to just talk a little bit about the Lions, right? So you talk about a coordinator. How old is he, by the way, Ben Johnson? 30?
I think he's in like his mid 30s. My friend Tay Seth, who noticed astutely that he got a perfect ACT score in math when he was growing up. His parents are both math teachers. So Ben Johnson, the OC, is certainly somebody I think who's going to get some love in the future as a offensive coordinator in this league.
Well, of course, your bonds, just like you have some homer to you when you're talking about the Lions and you're talking about the Vikings. I've said that to you before. And here's a situation now with this team, which a lot of people were down on, of course, and I've heard it at so many levels, taking their shots at Dan Campbell, taking their shots at moves being, made by Brad Holmes. And, Brad, as you mentioned, general managers, the best general managers out there, and evolving general managers are the ones that know their building better than any, right? Of course, they know the future better than any, at least projecting. So when people start throwing darts at a GM and his moves, I say, you really have to step back and look at the whole picture before you make the judgment. So back to Ben Johnson. What he's done, I think, offensively has I think, you have Jared Goff, who he's not a big progression guy. At least that's the perception. He definitely wants to get out of his hands. He's not that big time runner. No one likes to get hit, don't get me wrong, but that's definitely not his fancy, right? He wants to get it out of his hands. He wants to keep the ball alive, the drive alive, and keep everything alive. And I look back, when I step back and look at these quarterbacks like Jared, who has done a good job, to your point. And again, remember, Eric, I'm very particular about verbiage, right? I know for you, it's like, it's all about the numbers. But I am. You say good, you say very good, you say excellent, or you say great. I'm particular about that. I think Jared has done a good job this year. There's nothing fancy, flashy about him. I don't look at that team when they're out there on offense thinking, wow, this is an explosive juggernaut. I look at a guy managing well. I look at a coordinator doing a really good job managing, what they have. And, when you start looking at it from a GM perspective and thinking, wow, what would I do next year? I was pretty outspoken the year that I got fired, and we were talking about Matt Ryan, and we were talking about should they draft a quarterback to wait in the wings. And I do believe you can do that. And I said it. I thought that Atlanta, and I wasn't trying to be a know-it-all, I thought Atlanta should have drafted a quarterback that year. Nothing against Pitts, but I think it's a thoughtful approach to making sure you're building for the future. My point is, I believe Detroit should look really hard at what's out there in the draft, maybe being even aggressive, because where is Detroit going to end up? If they're at 12, 13, 14, 15, I don't know where they're going to be. That's a tough spot to get the heir apparent for the rest of your regime. I think they should think seriously about drafting one, leaving him in the wings, a la Aaron Rodgers. I'm a big fan of that. Maybe not 4 years, and build. So you're not in a situation, like Atlanta this year, which is a little bit more complicated right now. And that's not a shot at Atlanta. I want to be very clear about that. We all have opinions about how we would build our team.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, in this realm, we look at Goff and, it's not just about production, right? I think this is where I think, you and I kind of, we butted heads about Baker Mayfield, for example. Now, I think you're probably more right than me as far as, is he a good quarterback? The answer is no. But was he good enough on his rookie deal? At times he was. I think Goff, when Goff was in LA on his rookie deal, he was such a surplus that you could build a great roster around him and you could make a Super Bowl, evidently. I think that the rub is there are no middle-class quarterback contracts, to your point. And so the hard part is, he has a contract right now. Now you can go around it, but like his cap number next season is, $30.5 million. It's $31.5 million the following year. Now you can do a few things there, right? Like you can basically take the $20 million base salary, convert it into a signing bonus, cut that thing in half and get it down to $20 million if you really want to. And I guess like part of the discussion here is going to be about what the market's like, right? Because this year we had only one first round quarterback taken, and that guy was in the late first round as opposed to early. This year we actually have a few. Now, one of my friends and former interns, Tage Seth, comes in, and I think it's the Lions' best course of action to draft somebody like Richardson or Hooker day 2 and have them sit behind Goff until they're ready. I think that that's a reasonable approach, and They do have the Rams pick, which is less valuable now that the Rams won on Thursday, but they will be able to pick, of the Bryce Young, CJ Strouds, Will Levis. If they really want to go up and get that guy in the top 5 of the draft, they'll have some ammunition to do it because they'll have 2 first-round picks, the Rams and their own. Mm-hmm. But what do you think about a day 2 guy? Because the success rate on guys in day 2 has not been great.
It's not been great. And I read that, and all due respect, who was our fellow that just – that was Tage that just put that question in?
Yeah.
Tage, nice job, buddy. But here's what I would say. Tried and true, categorically, when you're a general manager, you are judged off of everything quarterback. People don't you and I have argued a little bit about that. What would you pay someone and move on from them? I mean, you're judged by your owner about the quarterback, by your team, by the teammates, the players, by your assistant coaches, by the world, how you put together your team and the quarterback choices you make. And there are some good guys out there, really good GMs who have had some struggles with it, who are really good at evaluating talent. But that decision to go with a quarterback, whether it was a second day or someone not highly regarded, again, put yourself in a GM spot when you're thinking, all right, not only do I want to win and I want to have an heir apparent here, the chances of hitting on a quarterback in those later rounds is low. Do you really want to do that and put yourself in a spot like you're not the quarterback guru? Because everyone wants to be a quarterback guru. But when you don't go after the guy, personally, I would get aggressive and go after a person that truly is adept, like Aaron Rodgers and other people who have been, in the wings. I wouldn't count on that sort of lower opportunity to capitalize on the down the line guy.